Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Caroline County Planning Commission to order. I want to welcome everyone that is in attendance. In way of recognition, to my far left, we have Mr. Purcell Minor representing the Mattaponi District. To my left is Dr. Carol Horton of Port Royal. To my right is Mr. J.D. Young, who is our Vice Chair representing Reedy Church. To his right is Mr. George Weaver of Madison, and to the far end is Mr. Richard Williams representing Western Carolina. Tonight we have with us Mr. Leon Hughes, the Director of Planning and Community Development, Mr. Greg Pennington, our County Planner. We have Ms. Priscilla Voigt taking care of our IT needs this evening. This special meeting was requested by the Planning Commission Chair. So if it's an inconvenience to anyone, I'm to blame. I will fall on my sword. But it is regarding the proposed proffer amendments that's requested by the applicant for the Carmel Church Station, RZ 03-2024. I see Mr. McKenzie, our legal counsel, is also present. Thank you. Tonight's format will be in the form of what you would call a work session. A specified work session would require a motion and vote by the commissioners at a regular meeting, and I just felt that that would potentially cause a further delay. So tonight there will be no motion or vote on this request. In lieu of conducting 3 separate meetings between 2 commissioners and representatives of the applicant, I just felt it was better as a body to address these issues. Therefore, we can discuss them amongst ourselves. Dr. Horton may raise a point that prompts a question from Mr. Weaver. So in order for everyone to hear everything at the same time, I just felt this was the best forum to do it. So each commissioner does have different thoughts and perspectives, and we can draw upon each other on that. Presently, this property is zoned planned mixed use development, and data centers are allowed as a by right. So the present proffers were set in place in 2009, I believe, and I believe Mr. Weaver was a part of that process. So we can draw upon his expertise in it as well. But we should keep in mind that changes in proffers can have consequences, and they could possibly alter the goals and objectives of the commission as well as the board of supervisors. So data centers are significant projects, and they are going to have an effect on the county. Some pro, maybe some con. With that being said, I don't believe that the planning department has any type of presentation, and I don't know if Mrs. Ann Niels Cosby or Mr. Tom Nessler, isn't it? Nessler, have any things that they would like to say before we delve into the meat of the matter.
I do. I'd really
if you would approach the podium, please.
Yeah, we do. I'd really love to run through a few slides with you guys that I have prepared and that Craig has. And it's meant to really go over a summary of our application. And I think hopefully this will provide some color. And as a background, we went through this deck PowerPoint presentation we started with at our community meeting. And we adapted it to answer some of the community's questions, during which time some time passed, and then we came here and we presented it here, and then we had some meetings at the planning office where we refined it a little bit further. So I just want to be clear that anything we've communicated to anybody in the county is in this material. There's no extra material that's been provided anywhere. And yeah, this is the meat and potatoes of it. So to get into it a little bit, so just to remind everybody of our project and of our application, on the screen right now is our generalized development plan. And so where we are, just to remind everybody, is directly next to I-95 at the Carmel Church exit. And our site is bordered to the south by CSX and the Flying J to the north, and then a large area of wetlands to the west, which are denoted in the yellow and green. Does this have a laser pointer on it, Craig? Yeah. The red? Yeah. So we have, this is an inset of the Flying J and Rogers Clark. So we will share an entrance off of Rogers Clark with the Flying J, and then we have a private access drive here that enters into the site. And again, this private access drive will be used only by the data center and the power company to access the substation. So as you enter the site, we are avoiding all ecologically sensitive wetland areas. The two crossings will be bridged. And this is the substation pad where the utility will build. And then, so what we're trying to get across here as well is that this red line, this red dotted line is kind of that's our project area, right? That's what we're asking for to carve out and to identify specifically is what we want to move forward with within the greater Carmel Church Station now. This is data center A, this is data center B, and this gray hatch here is future data center site. So this is what we're referring to in this document as phase one is these two buildings. Together they represent about 630,000 square feet. This project represents about a $2 billion investment from our end. That's a summary of what we're building. And as a reminder, in the data centers themselves, you have data center halls, which is where the actual computers go. You have admin space, and that's generally denoted by the small green boxes. That's where there's basically offices. The little yellow here is the loading dock. So that's where the trucks will come in and drop off equipment. The orange boxes here will be generator yards. So we'll have backup generators there that are muffled and enclosed and behind a wall. And then kind of the associated parking, which is out front of each building here. So that's the project. And I'm going to move to the next slide here. And if as I'm going through, you guys have questions, please go ahead and lob them my way. I want to make sure we communicate to you guys that we aren't here to skip steps or do anything or to not plan very well, right? And what I'm trying to illustrate to you is this is the timeline of key points where we've interacted with the Planning Commission and the Planning Department with this application, right? So last August was when we really started communicating our proffer amendment application. We had a technical review committee in October of last year. We worked with Joey to get a will serve letter for the water. And then October 19th is the date we actually submitted the proffer amendment application. And we were trying to get to the December 28th meeting, but that got canceled. But we did do site tours, if you guys remember. We went out on that rainy day, presented the project, and the application in summary to you guys back in January. We updated the application, answering any questions, and then we were on the agenda here January 25th, where you guys were able to see the project for the first time. That was not our public hearing, but we were on the agenda. And then we had our community meeting where some of you were in attendance, as well as Reggie, our supervisor, came to that. We also had Gary from the Economic Development Department. And then we, again, updated, so then we had a planning meeting with county staff and got the power company on the line. And then Sorry, I jumped the gun there. I was talking about, the notice letters went out January 30th. Anyway, our community meeting was February 12th. And then, anyway, we updated the application and we had our planning commission hearing, public hearing. And then after that, we asked for some meetings so we could go through the meat and potatoes of this, because we know that the existing ordinance is quite long for Carmel Church Station. So here we are today. So what I'm just trying to communicate to you guys is, I hope you look at us as we're trying to be good partners and we're trying to be responsible. We're not trying to cut any corners. We're trying to make sure we're putting a robust application in front of you and communicating that application to the highest degree that we can. As you guys know, this site is part of the Carmel Church Station planned mixed-use development, the 1,000 acres. As Mr. Schwartz said, it was put in place in 2010. So our application asks to, well, basically the current proffers ask for a design code that regulates the entire development, the entire 1,000 acres or so. The owner of Carmel Church Station hasn't developed for any of these land bays yet, right? I think land bay G in the top right here was carved off. I think this is dead, but the purple on the top right is carved off now. But so what I'm trying to say is the design code that we're asking for a proffer amendment to contemplates many different types of uses across this entire 1,000 acres. And this entire 1,000 acres is meant to be centered around a train station that's not yet developed. So our project, again, is in Land Bay A, which is up there in the top. It's the orange kind of highlight. And you can barely see it on the screen, but Land Bay A is in phases 1, 2, and 8. So what we want to do, and like you guys know, the current zoning does allow for data center construction. So what we're proposing to do is move forward with this project now, subjecting it to stringent standards that have already been adopted by the county. And by that, I mean the planned innovation, research, and technology ordinance that you guys developed and put in place that specifically regulates data centers. So another piece of information here is, so on the left is the entire 1,000 acres, on the right is our specific project area. So we're carving out that specific project area, and the mechanism for doing that is calling it a special district. So we're saying, for our application, can we subject this special district to the Carmel Church Station PMUD and also the Planned Innovation, Research, and Technology Ordinance? And we're going to use that, and we're going to use that per ordinance guidelines instead of the yet to be developed design code. And because the rest of the land bay, the build out is unknown, we're also asking for an exemption to the regulating plan so that we can move forward with this project now. And so, again, this allows us to go forward with this project now. Data centers are allowed, but these are the mechanisms. And we're going to build a data center very responsibly by following the PERT. So, as a reminder, inside the PERT, there are a lot of very specific regulations that are required, right? The setbacks, how far away you are from the property line, the height of the building is limited, the buffering, meaning and screening, like where you have to leave vegetation or where you have to plant vegetation, the aesthetics, like the facade accents and roof lines, the building materials that you can use, the colorways that you're allowed to use, lighting requirements, landscape requirements, sound levels. Those are all in the PERT. So again, we're asking to be responsible, follow good planning, and follow the PERT. The regulating plan and the design code are not yet established. And I'll probably skip to the next slide in a second, but our goal right now is to move forward with this investment in the county under the more specific stringent data center regulations established by the PERT, right? So what does that kind of look like? So if we can do a side-by-side comparison, to the left is the table of contents or thereabouts of the PERT ordinance, and in the middle in blue is the design code, right? So you can see that the specificity for planning required by the PERT is much more significant than the design code. And if I can't predict this, but the odds are that since the PERT is so well developed, if there's a design code eventually, they'd probably just point to the PERT as the design code for data centers. But that's speculation on the future. Again, you know, we like this site because we're at the interchange off of I-95. We like that it's an industrial area. You know, we're bordering. There's plenty of, well, we like that we're bordered by 95 CSX and the truck stop, and then we're isolated by those wetlands to the west of us. The natural screening of the property will make it very hard to see if you could see it at all. You know, and we're more than a third of a mile through very heavily wooded areas from any residence. So I guess my last point on this slide is, you know, even prior to the PMUD zoning, industrial was a land use for this specific location. So it's been tagged for a very long time for a similar use. Again, our access drive is a single private access drive. And we did do a traffic study. The traffic study showed that the impact of this development would be minimal from a traffic perspective. As part of this development, we will pay the road improvement fee that's required in the proffers, which is 48 cents per developed square foot. And then from an environmental standpoint, again, we're avoiding any sensitive wetlands entirely. And then as is required actually in the PERT, more than 20% of the remaining project area, so inside that red dashed line again, will remain open space. A significant part of what we're proffering compared to maybe some stuff that you've seen, some other projects in the county, is that we will use closed loop air cooling, meaning we won't be using any evaporative measures to cool the data center. That significantly limits our water use. And we know the county has a sensitivity to water resources. So that is something that we're proffering on top of the other requirements. And for awareness, that chilled water is only treated with bacterial inhibitors and maybe some glycol for freeze protection. So we're not talking about a chemical, it's in a closed loop system. We don't ever actually completely drain and flush it. It stays closed loop. So very limited water use compared to similar projects. From a sound perspective, we will certainly comply with the noise limitations in the PERT. And then there is a significant ambient noise in the area, 95, the railway, and we will use noise dampening barriers. So again, the generators will be enclosed, muffled, and behind a wall. And then the chillers, which cool the building and are on the roof, will also be behind a wall. From a running perspective, those generators only run in an emergency or for regular maintenance, and each one of them runs about 15 minutes a month, and then we'll do that individually. So they will not run more than one at a time for regular maintenance, and that'll be done during regular business hours. This is a chart summary of a summary level of the actual proffers that we're changing, right? So this kind of gets into a little bit more of the detail. And I think we'd like to know what your questions are, maybe specifically when it comes to the existing proffers and how we're changing them. But in summary, what we're doing came out in the slides we already covered. So I guess to start off with, the owner is required to record the CCRs to coordinate the development of Carmel Church Station and create an owner association to maintain common areas before development may begin. So we're saying that since we're the only one and there's no one else developed on this Carmel Church Station yet, we would like our project site, so again, the area in red, to be maintained by us, and that development be subject to the PERC standards. All right, that's how that actual change to proffer number 3 effectuates. Number 4, owner must develop a water and wastewater plan for Carmel Church Station before the first site plan. So again, we're not developing 1,000 acres. We're developing 130, and we're proffering that we'll have a closed loop cooling system, which minimizes water use. So we're asking not to do a water and wastewater plan for the entire Carmel Church Station. Next one, proffer number 5, requires a TIA prior to any development. So our specific project doesn't require one per VDOT's benchmarks, but we have already completed a traffic study. Number 6 establishes the proposed phasing of Carmel Church Station, and what we're obviously proposing now is to the specific project area be developed entirely in phase 1. Regulation 3, no land bay may be developed until a regulating plan for the entire land bay is approved by the Planning Commission. So obviously right now, there's no one else to develop the rest of the land bay. So again, we're asking to move forward with this now. And then regulation 4.2, that's how we're identifying the proffer, the project area in the PMUD amendment or in the proffers. Transects are contemplated in the current writing. And so land bay A is allowed to be transect 4 or 5. And we're just saying, let's make this project area a special district so it's easy to identify. And we can move forward with that special district area right now. So those are kind of the summary of the additional proffer changes that we're making. And my last slide, so I'm sorry to keep going on, is some of the positive impacts that we anticipate here, right? So each one of the 2 buildings will have 30 permanent well-paying jobs. And as Virginia Economic Development Partnership put out there, each permanent job is generally supported by 4.1 additional jobs outside of the campus. And not to mention that during construction, there will be hundreds of jobs to construct the data center. And we will work with our contractor and with the building operator to make sure that there's robust local outreach, and that's to individuals as well as local companies. MC Dean, who's local, actually has a modular business for data center components. So companies like that will certainly reach out to. From a financial standpoint, again, phase 1 is about a $2 billion investment. The entire build out would be about a $5 billion investment. And then if you look at Davenport's information from the town hall, they basically pegged the tax revenue from a 500,000 square foot facility to be between $2 and $6.75 million annually. And then if you were to take that and do the analysis the same way that AWS did, this project produced $9.3 million of tax revenue before incentives. So a significant tax revenue generation. So in summary, we hope to be out of mind. We want to follow good planning practices. We feel like this is the best method to follow good planning practices and move forward with this investment now. We hope that you agree. And we'd appreciate any any questions from you guys. From our standpoint, we're responsible for certain timelines, and we're responsible to our investors to make things happen. And right now, we'd appreciate a vote either way from you guys at the next meeting. It would mean a lot to us to figure out if this project has a chance or not. So thank you for your time, and Joe and I are here for any questions.
Okay. Commissioners, y'all have any questions at this point?
And just one point I want to make is, Mr. Weber, I know the packet is large and there's a lot of data in there, and that's something that you brought up at the last Planning Commission hearing. I think it's important to keep in mind that the existing Carmel Church Station planned mixed-use development ordinance is hundreds of pages long, and when we want to make one change, you usually have to make it in 5 places, right? So that's contributing to the size of the document. We're not trying to do anything overly complicated here. We're trying to keep it fairly simple, but unfortunately the nature of that document is it's very long. So we want to make sure we're communicating those changes to you guys appropriately, and that if you have any questions at all about any of the changes that we've made, we'd love to answer them.
All right, if no one else wants to kick the ball, I will. I'm sorry?
I'll keep the ball.
Go ahead, go right ahead.
Well, as almost everybody here knows, I was involved with this project when I worked for the county. So I have seen this project go bounced around, back and forth, up and down. I was also involved with all the original existing proffers that are here. Okay. My biggest question was answered very simply, is the mere fact that you can build a data center on this site right now, tomorrow, without making the site any smaller, any different. You can find a place on that site, and it's a big site. You can find a place anywhere on that site and put a data center. And therefore, I become concerned that all the original proffers that were established for that entire piece of land. Now, I know it's totally different from what they're anticipating now. But I, for one, see no real reason why we should start considering changing the proffers. Now, an adjustment here, an adjustment there, that's something different. But right at this particular time, what's brought to me is a request to amend the proffers to allow a data center. That's what it says in the piece of paper that was submitted to me. And I can tell you right now that you do not have to adjust any of the proffers that are there right now to be able to build the data center, whether they want one building at 300,000 square feet or 5 buildings at 300,000 square feet. This is not going to stop them from developing the site. And I guess I'm making my statement probably before I should even consider making my statement, but that's the way I feel about it. I've been involved with this a long time. I mean, I go back with Lyd Thompson, Tommy Thompson.
So, Mr. Weber, if we could do that, we certainly would. We can't. That's why we're here.
You can't what?
I can't build a data center on that site anywhere right now without some approval by the Board of Supervisors.
Well, you can adjust your site plan to draw a little box any place you want to put a data center. And I can tell you the Board of Supervisors will go along with it because they want data centers. It's not that we're against data centers. I just think by removing the existing proffers, okay, accomplishes nothing.
So we, just for clarity too, Mr. Weaver, we're not changing any of the proffers for any future development. So I want to make that clear to the board too, is that making the tweaks that we're making to move forward now affects none of the rest of the development, right? And so in order for us to do that, right, there'd be two options, right? One is to be here in front of you tonight doing it this way and actually applying more stringent standards to ourselves to apply to that data center. Or it would require significant investment from many investors across the entire 1,000 acres to hire consultants and agree on a design code. And that design code covers many different types of uses, right? And I mentioned the build out of this project area alone is a $5 billion investment. So we're hoping that we pick the right way and that we're here in front of you tonight to move forward with the right way, and that hopefully this investment attracts other investments to this Carmel Church Station.
Mr. Messler, based on what you just said, I can concur with what you're saying as far as it appears that you're handcuffing the developers unless you're going to have one developer to develop the entire tract. These folks are coming forward to at least start the development of that entire tract. The existing proffers don't allow them to do that based upon what I read. It appears that the proffers now that they're proposing is being upgraded as opposed to being decreased or modified to something that's not going to benefit the county, but what they're proposing is going to benefit the county. I don't agree with just willy-nilly changing proffers either, but in this case, this is a benefit for the county as opposed to a benefit specifically for one entity. My next point there would be the staff. I mean, the staff has put a lot of time and effort into researching these documents. I mean, it's what the staff get paid for. They're the professionals. They understand it. I think if they thought it was a problem or it shouldn't be done, they would have said it was inconsistent or not recommended. But it is brought before us to consider and look into it. I'm just not sure that. I guess what I need to say is we shouldn't allow just one entity to stop the benefit of the entire county. This is an opportunity that doesn't come every day. And with a $5 billion investment, we need it. We need it badly. We need, new schools. We need new fire stations. We need a lot of new things in the county. And where is that going to come from if we don't take on investments similar to this?
Thank you. One point just to that is there is that we hope that also a data center as opposed to other industrial allowed uses on the land is more attractive to you guys from a development standpoint, less traffic, better income to the county.
Mr. Nessler, I do find data centers appealing. So I'm in favor of data centers as opposed to other types of industries. I do have just a few questions, if you'll bear with me.
Yeah,
I want to go and unpack this, okay?
I will read Tolstoy in reverse with you.
Thank you. I think you're going to remember that for a while. The application, and one thing that caught my eye was Virginia Land Investments, LLC, is granted authority by Caroline 225 LLC, care of Thompson Development LLC, Caroline 40 LLC, care of Thompson Development LLC. Caroline 544 LLC, care of Thompson Development LLC. Ruther Glen Road LLC, care of Thompson Development LLC. Virginia Land Holding LLC, care of Thompson Development LLC. And finally, Virginia Land Investment LLC, fee simple owners. And of course, fee simple owners means that Virginia Land Investment has clear control over this piece of property. They can do with it as they wish. If they wanted to sell it, they could do that. We have layers of what I'm seeing as protection. Now, I don't know if the previously mentioned LLCs are still involved in Virginia Land Investment or not. And my question is this, my first question, I guess, because there are going to be several tonight. Should there be a tort action against Virginia Land Investments LLC, would there be assets available to satisfy any potential judgment? Because an LLC is not required to have assets.
So my understanding is that we as the applicant are ADP Carmel Church Data Hub LLC. And so the assets developed on this property would be the collateral, I would assume, say, or, you know, available to any lawsuit against the property. Because that entity, ADP Carmel Church Data Hub LLC, will lease the property from the entity that you mentioned.
So we have another layer added into it.
But we will, I mean, it's a 99-year ground lease, so we will basically control the property. So any action brought against the property, or say like we didn't follow a proffer and there was action against us, right? That would go to ADP Carmel Church Data Hub LLC, which is us.
That would go to who, sir?
ADP Carmel Church Data Hub LLC.
ADP.
Which is us. ADP is just a shorthand for Avio Digital Partners, and that's us, the applicant. And so we will have a 99-year ground lease with the Thompson Companies LLC, and so, you know, any action would be against us and against the property.
Okay. None of my questions are a gotcha type question. I want you to understand.
Yeah, no, I understand. That's a lot of LLCs. And I can't speak to Mr. Thompson's business practices, but
I understand. Yeah. Well, and you do not have to answer this. Mm-hmm. Is Mr. Thompson involved with ADP or Virginia Land Investment LLC? You don't have to answer that, but it's a matter of public record. I can go to the State Corporation Commission and pull that information.
I honestly don't know specifically, so I'd rather answer that question for you in an email, if that's all right. Absolutely.
And here again, it doesn't matter. I'd just like to know who's who in the zoo, so to speak. Okay?
Yeah, totally understand.
All right. Some of your requested proffer amendments, I do not have a problem with.
Okay.
But I would like to go back to your initial diagram of Land Bay A in that particular piece of property, because it's 255 acres. And you are seeking, yes, the PMUD map.
Yeah, the PMUD map's on the left there.
Yes, sir. You are seeking proffer amendments to roughly 97 of those acres.
Yeah, so yes. Okay. So including the substation pad and the entry road, it's 130 acres.
All right. Something was mentioned at our last regular meeting.
Yeah.
Just north of the outlined area.
Here?
Yes, sir, that area right in there. Someone mentioned residential. I've reviewed the video. I'm not going to call any names who said residential. But I think it's important to know when you're asking for proffer amendments that would have an effect on, or could have an effect on the remaining property that could be developed, especially if you're speaking of residential. The area that you have dotted out, the roughly 97 acres, is that the only property that your firm is going to have control over? Or will your firm have control over the entire 255 acres?
Our firm will only have control over the red outlined area shown.
The only the 97
Yeah.
acres?
So if another developer comes in and wants to develop the rest of this parcel, I would note that, you know, there are environmentally sensitive areas, as you can see, kind of in the green in that little part, right? So they'd have to permit those, and they'd also have to come here and go through this process, and get approved in order to build there. But the other allowed uses under the PMUD would be allowable in the land bay, but that's again subject to your approval of the regulating plan to do so.
So your proffer amendments, bottom line is, only pertain to the 97 acres?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So housing, other types of industry could be placed on a portion of the remaining available land by someone else?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's partly why in our GDP we've shown, you know, setbacks, buffer areas, even inside of that red dotted line, because we want to make sure that if there's anything, say, you know, I think the most easily developable piece of land will go here, in kind of the middle. And so we're sensitive to that, right? And our site plan will include measures that keep the effects of our project within the red dashed area shown.
But you want exclusion from that, correct?
Exclusion from, sorry?
You want the proffer changes to only apply to the 97 acres that you control. However, the remaining property would be subject to different regulations.
Yeah, nothing would change for any of the future development, including any future development within the land bay from the existing proffers.
Correct, exactly my point.
Okay. Is there, I mean,
And my concern
yeah.
is this. If someone wants to come in and build let's say a small housing development, and let's say a fast food restaurant. Okay. And they have certain requirements that they have to abide by. But you want to be excluded, even though you're going to be right next door, relatively within, within the same property, you want to be excluded from those requirements. Do you follow my train of thought?
Yeah, no, I see, like, say, you know, a bad example, but say, you know, everybody needs to have green roofs and our roof's blue, right? And that's what the design code says. We would be exempt from that.
Okay.
Yeah. And part of that is the nature of going first, right? Which is why we want to be subject to the PERT to make sure we have good architectural standards so that it'll fit in. But the other piece I'll say is, you know, even from across the stream from us, there'll be a heavily wooded area. And again, you know, we'll have setbacks and be incentivized to basically keep as much of that existing tree line in there as possible, so that if somebody did come in, which again, you guys would have to prove the regulating plan of whatever went in there, we wouldn't be subject to, you know, the same green roof provision. And, you know, again, our access road is a private access road, so however anybody else develops within the property, they won't have access to our drive, right? So, you know, while there is that little bit of area that we are sensitive to, you know, at least to the south, we have the CSX rail line, and to the east, we have the border of 95, right? So it is, and to the west, the wetlands, so it is nice and tucked away in that sense. And, you know, I would imagine that future development in that area would be something along the lines of a technology use, like an office to support data center activity, something along those lines. But I'm speculating at that point. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Let me move on to something else. Item 3D. Why remove the design charrette? And I'll be honest with you, I'd seen the word charrette before in schooling that we had to attend, but I had to actually look it back up again to know what the definition of charrette was. So you want to be excluded from that?
Yeah, so the design charrette is for the design code. So that's my understanding of it, is that's the process that a developer would go through that has developing all the different types of uses across all of the land base. They would have that in mind, and they would develop a charrette of the design code and work with the staff at the county to get that design code approved based on that design charrette process. And so we're saying, since we don't have the investment capability of developing the entire lot or the entire 1,000 acres, can we exempt ourselves from that, because we're subjecting ourselves to the PERT standards, and then on top of that, a few other proffers, right? And so the PERT standards, like we talked about in the presentation, include a much larger degree of restrictions and guidelines than the design code contemplates. So we're asking to exclude ourselves from that process, that a developer of the entire 1,000 acres would go through with you, and instead move forward under the PERT and a couple of other proffers, like our water consumption proffer.
And your water consumption, your water plan, I have no problem in doing away with that. I don't see where that would be applicable.
Okay. Yeah.
As far as design, your design can have an effect on the remaining properties, just as the remaining properties could have an effect on your property. So there is a balance there, and
yeah, I mean, we'll work with staff too on our site plan, because how our building looks and feels will have to be in line with the PERT, obviously, but also, you know, staff needs to approve our site plan.
And not that you wouldn't work with planning staff, I believe that you would. But if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. So if there's nothing to...
No, it's required to get the site plan approved, right?
Right, exactly, yes. But I'm not going to beat that horse anymore.
Okay, I understand your point that, you know, the look and feel of our building has to, you know, we want to future think about what the rest of the surrounding area could be developed as, and we want to pay attention to that and make sure it's something that fits in with the future neighborhood.
Okay. Item 4D, the water system. You are committing to a closed loop system.
Correct.
So, I just want to make sure that that's well understood. A little bit on the traffic. I've gone over, and I don't know if this is just a housekeeping item or not, but in the Exhibit B, it's dated January the 10th of 2024. The dates in the proffer changes relating to Kimley Horn are dated October 23rd, 2023. So maybe just as a little housekeeping, we need to update and coordinate the dates on the Kimley Horn report.
Yep, we'll make sure that's updated. We had done an initial sort of traffic study that was older, that was updated in January, so we'll make sure that gets updated in for the
Okay.
subsequent meeting.
Like I said, that's very minor. My questions with their report is, there was no actual count done, and I realize on the south side of Welcome Way Drive and Rogers Clark Boulevard, there is no existing driveway. It's an entryway into the Flying J. Visually, it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
As we experienced when we did site visits. I think it took us several minutes to be able to turn into the Flying J, and we were traveling, for all practical purposes, eastbound. We were on that side of the road. Traffic traveling westbound trying to make a left turn, when those trucks are rolling in, they get stacked up, so that's a nightmare in of itself.
Yeah, so one of the things we know we have to do is coordinate with the landowner of that parcel to make traffic improvements. Like, that's not gonna be suitable for us, so we'll be working with the landowner to make sure that it's easy access for our purposes back to the data center.
Yeah, so, the things that Kimley Horn based their report on, it wasn't an actual visual, hands-on, boots on the ground type thing. These were projections and models and everything else that they listed. Item 9E, Section 5. Co-planar and same materials facade.
Okay. Sorry.
You want an exemption from that?
Sorry, you are on 9E.
Yes, sir. I think it's section Roman numeral 5. Let me go back and try to find it again.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling to it.
Maybe I've lost my spot on that. And I think I may have lost all of mine on that section.
So,
They're talking about.
yeah, so in section 9E.
It may be 6.
You're talking about section 9E, Roman numeral 13. Data center uses in any special district in Land Bay A are not subject to subsections 5, 6, 8, or 10. And subsection 5.
Yes, it was.
Street screens shall be located coplanar to the building facade and built with the same materials as the facade.
Yes, sir, that's it.
So facade requirements are dealt with in the PERT, and street screens aren't contemplated. We don't have any public streets in the development, so that's why we struck that.
All right, because the majority of them are already covered under the PERT.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's just duplication.
Yes.
Okay. And you're looking for this to be a special district?
Mm-hmm. The reason for that is there's no other really mechanism to to identify a specific piece of property. So that's why we're calling it this special district.
Wouldn't that need some definition by county planning?
I believe it's generally defined in the Carmel Church Station PMUD itself, a special district. It's somewhat looser than the transects, but and correct me if I'm wrong, Anil, but that's my understanding. The primary reason it's in there is to serve as a vehicle to identify our project area.
Excellent. Last but not least, why exempt from the design code? You may have explained it already, and I've been trying to take notes and listen to this.
Yeah, no, it's probably the most important point, right? And that is because the design code covers the design facets across the entire 1,100 acres. And I am applying related to this 100 acres. And I don't have the investment capability to invest across all of the different types of uses contemplated across the entire 1,100 acres. So I can't, like, that would mean I would need to hire dozens of consultants and pay them millions of dollars to come up with a design code to cover all of that. And so rather than do that, because the PERT already defines significantly more things than we anticipate the design code would cover, we want to be subject to the PERT. So that's why we're asking to exempt from the design code, just because we feel like the PERT is the relevant design that needs to regulate us, in addition to some of those other proffers we put forward to make it a little more stringent than the PERT. And we don't have the bandwidth to, design consult on the entire 1,100 acres.
Okay, that's fair. I thank you, and I hope you don't feel that I was trying to grill you or anything, but I just wanted clarity in my mind on it.
No, I truly appreciate the questions.
Like I say, I do think we need data centers, and not trying to make it more difficult on you, but I want to keep it on the straight and narrow, okay?
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
Mr. Messer, one more question for clarity. Those areas that are outside of the red zone, I'm gonna call it.
Yeah.
Those are somewhat non-usable areas, correct? Have environmental issues.
Yeah, I mean, there's a joke in there, but you can see it's all lit up. So the purple in this case is the outline of Land Bay A, right? And the yellow, the faded yellow, is a resource protection area. And the green, the deep green, is wetland, right? So those are sensitive areas that if you wanted to build something, you probably couldn't. And then if you did or impact it slightly, you would need a lengthy permit process to go through with the Army Corps of Engineers. So yeah, the rest of that, this is a good depiction of it. Everything in green or light yellow there is an environmentally sensitive area that would be very, 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 very challenging to build on.
And the road would be private specifically just for the data center, so therefore there wouldn't be access to those other areas?
Correct. You could not, that road will only ever serve the data center.
Okay.
That does prompt another question. So I think you can see how one question can prompt another question.
Yeah.
That's a private road.
Correct.
If a developer wanted to come in and put in housing to the north side of your red line, they would need ingress and egress.
And they're not going to get it through our road. So you could imagine that would be challenging.
Oh, yes. That's why I asked.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Horton, I think you,
Yeah, just a few comments because this is our second data center, and I asked a lot of questions on the first one, which is already passed, and I've asked a lot of questions on this one already because it's been several meetings and also, you know, I've asked questions of staff. I think the stringents that are laid out here are pretty strict. I think we're holding their feet to the fire. We do tweak proffers a little bit from time to time for various reasons. I do like the idea of having these data centers very close to 95, and we do have a water sensitivity issue, and this is air cooled, limited water responsibility for us. So, and a lot of tax money that we need has already been brought up, and it's hidden in the woods. So those are just my thoughts.
understood. Thank you, Dr. Horton. Mr. Minor.
I see the staff put in a lot of work in this project. Mr. Weber has a good point. Bob, you had a good point brought to the table. A data center is good. You know, obviously a data center than a lot of houses. But as far as the board here, I think we put a lot of work into this, and we'll see where we go forward. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Minor. Mr. Williams?
I'd also like to mention, I actually wrote down the same thing that you had just said, Carol. We're kind of holding their feet to the fire for the entire development of 1,187 acres, I think is the total project. While we were busy, I kind of looked up the word design charrette, and it basically says to explore and share a broad diversity of design ideas. You only have one idea, and that's to build a data center, and you can't speak for the entire project. So I understand why you're asking to be let out of the charrette. And I said this privately to myself. I think that if, you know, we do approve this, that if they build it, others will come and follow, and maybe after, 2008, when this thing first came to development, maybe other companies will follow suit and maybe they'll want to come. I mean, we obviously need the tax revenue in the community. It's approved for the area. All they're asking for is us to forgive them for some of the other things that they can't predict, and that's what everybody else wants within that development. So maybe if they set the table, everybody else can figure out the rest of the dinner menu. That's my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Yeah, in 2009, when these proffers were first laid out, or 2010, whenever the board finally approved them, I don't think anyone could envision 15 years down the road what data centers were going to look like in the future, or what they were going to require. This area was laid out under those proffers under, I guess, a village type thing with multiple uses. You're going to be using 97 of the 255 acres. All of that, the remaining land is not usable because of it being wetlands and protected areas. And I guess we'll just have to see what comes down the road for the remaining parcels. But not trying to make it more difficult. In fact, I would like to make it easy for data centers to come in within certain guidelines. Certainly no one is trying to make it more difficult. So let's see what we can do on this.
Thank you. We're trying to follow good planning practices here, and we, like I said, we know that the Carmel Church Station PMUD is a long document, but we're trying to do the right thing here, and I hope that's reflecting.
I don't think anyone questions your good faith. I really don't. I don't detect where anybody's trying to be slick and slide something under the door. That's just not what comes across. And like I told you, March the 5th, when we met at the planning office, my decision to call for a special meeting was absolutely no reflection on you. It was just my concerns that we do it as a unified body and collectively, and I think that's the best way to handle it.
We're actually very appreciative that you called for it. I mean, we had hoped that it would happen initially. It's great to be able to answer detailed questions from you guys in this forum. We like it to be a public forum, and we like that one question leads to another because we want to be able to answer questions.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Commissioners, anyone else have anything further? With that, we're not going to do a vote tonight. I will need a motion to defer this to our next regular meeting on March the 28th at 6:30 p.m.
I make that motion that we defer this until the next meeting on the 28th March.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Young, seconded by Mr. Williams. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, motion carries. We will now need a motion to close this special.
I can make a motion that we close this special meeting.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Horton, seconded by, Mr. Minor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. This meeting is closed. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you all, and thank you to the staff for all your efforts. Really appreciate it.
Mr. Hughes, I want to express my appreciation for you making the arrangements on relatively short notice to accomplish this. I do appreciate it. Thank you.